So we're just trying to kind of hear from the community and talk amongst ourselves about what is not working, what could be better. And I think a big part of it for me is to hear more stories from individual people about like who you are and how it's affected you and what's happening. Um, so for me, I have a bus on my property. Grace is here. She also lives on my property. We started using it when I'm renting out my house on Airbnb. I have a van that I live in and do go into the bus. Um, and it allows me, when I moved here with another person that is no longer a thing. So I'm a single person paying the mortgage and everything myself. So to have extra money coming in is important to me, to have a more flexible lifestyle where when I'm not at the property, somebody else is there to help care for things. Um, and under the current codes, that is not allowed unless temporary living in an RV or a bus or something like that is only allowed with a permit. You have to come to the town and ask permission for it. They may or may not grant it. It's mostly they're granted for people who are constructing a house or something like that, and there's not a lot of flexibility within these laws to allow people who are hooked up to utilities, properly skirted, following all the codes otherwise, to make that a primary dwelling. And given some of the challenges facing this community in terms of finding housing and the different ways that people are trying to make things work, I feel like there's definitely some room for improvement there. John, you want to share your perspective?
Yeah, so being retired early, I live in the, in my fifth wheel campground with my company. I am hooked up to town sewer and to the correct 30 amp LV plug-in. So I've got power and water on there. Actually, it did skirt my trailer to, make it through the winter, stuff like that. And I did receive the notice, and it's interesting on that. I got a 10 off, and they did grant me the permit on that. And so I was trying to do other arrangements to try to find somewhere else to live type of thing. And so far, everything on that is falling through. I can't just take the trailer and put it down in the RV park, and there's spaces there, but that would be my only income for the month is, I wouldn't have any other living money to live on if I did that. So I like living on our own property there. I'm out of the way, not blocking anything. And stuff, and it would be nice if we could find maybe some leniency, some wiggle room in the town code that we would be able to allow, not an overabundance of things, but if you're on your own property, being able to have and live in at least one cushion would be asking for two. Average on the place, but be able, still have the tenant with the knowledge of that you're living there and stuff like that. It's got to be safe at the same time. You can't be running extensions or not over an extended use type thing because you're overloading your cord. Trying to power your RV up and stuff like that. If you're just running off just regular extension cord and stuff, you need the heavier gauge wires that powers those RVs and stuff. Or you're gonna want to get the fire like that with going on those. So my feeling is, being loosening the code up to where we can have at least up to one RV style unit if it's hooked up properly and it's registered, insured. That would definitely help me out. Otherwise, I gotta find out some way to lay out money for an addition on the house or buying land where I can go over to, it's the house we have right now is doesn't have enough rooms in it, unless I want to sleep on the couch, and I'm not really up to that. That doesn't work for me, you know. A kid, I can sleep on the couch, I can sleep on the floor.
One of the things, just having your RV parked on your land, and you have a house there that you live in, the RV should probably go camping in. But
Yeah, normally, there's no restrictions on that at all. So if you live on, got your place there, you can park an RV there. As long as it's not hooked up and people are not living in it, there's no restrictions at all on having an RV on your place.
I'd put it in our regular 30 amp RV outlet, just to keep the battery charged up. Not a problem with that, is there?
Technically, it has to be licensed, but,
Well,
What,
Yeah.
our RV has to be licensed? It is.
it is.
no, I was saying, technically, that's the only restriction on parking something on your property.
Oh,
We can hook up to it any time, and go down and handle it with it.
Yeah.
Totally legal.
Yeah.
So Paula and Tim, you guys have obviously been to town board meetings over the last couple of months, had some time to think about these. We've had some discussions about them. Is there anything that you guys wanted to share from your thoughts or experiences so far?
For myself, I'm here tonight to listen to more of what citizens have to say at this your meeting, so. But
Well, as John mentioned, current ordinance allows for a RV or a person who lived in a property on a temporary basis. So basically, this discussion is more on the point of trying to develop some kind of system that allows someone to live there on a more permanent basis. I think the current ordinance says 30 days or you have to have a temporary use permit to do that. And then the town board generally determines a time frame. Generally, it's usually 6 months.
Well, is this on existing also, or just on new?
On existing.
Mobile home park, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
Everything's fine in it.
We have three camper spaces in that mobile home.
There's code on more for like you couldn't create a new RV park or anything like that, but if it's already been in place and you're following the code so far, you haven't, this is more for people who have gotten notices that they are in violation of the code. So if you haven't gotten a notice, probably fine. But this mostly addresses just, again, our main concern is that we are getting coded on private property where we are not citing, and a lot of the concern is valid that in the past there have been people who have taken advantage of the ability of, well, I have permission from the owner to be here and I can do this and I can park my RV here and I can live in it because the owner told me I could. And then those people taking advantage, making a mess, being disgusting, not taking care of our town and things. But that's not the case of what we're here to fight. We're here to fight for more of a permanent variance of saying, if you follow X, Y, Z and you're doing these things, then you're fine and you can go about your business. Being properly hooked up, having a nice clean property, using your own property that you own and pay taxes on to, rent out as an Airbnb shouldn't be a problem as long as you're not disturbing anybody else. If nobody's complaining about a camper that you have parked up that somebody's living in, why is there a problem? If you're properly hooked up to the sewage system that can handle, and Tim brought up a very, very good point at one of the town meetings is we have to make sure that we don't overload our sewage system. And that's 100% valid. Like, we are properly hooked up to sewage for the camper. It's got a drainage. We take care of it. It's clean. It's not draining anywhere. We just make sure to update everything to make sure that all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted. But the question is, can the system handle that extra burden on that specific area of piping? One of the things that we were told, get it scoped. Have someone come in with camera and scope it and see if they determine that it can handle it. And you can talk to
Or is it out of Placerville? And of course, once they got here, the camera quit working. So.
No, the person who said that they came through and did the inspection.
Oh, Brian Keating and Bob. The number Bob. Bob Ralph. And according to Brian, the only thing that they have done on that sewer system down through there is clean it and scope it to visually see what it is. So there hasn't been any upgrades, lining or anything like that done down through there.
Well, the mains are gonna be the towns.
Mhm.
It's the service, direct service to your property, your service line on your property that concerns us as far as putting extra living quarters on.
Which would be 100% valid, and I agree that that should be the burden of the homeowner to make sure that that system is safe for them to do that, and then yes, you can have that one extra burden on that line, and that's fine kind of thing. But I think one of the major concerns,
Question. So I feel like there's been two conversations surrounding it. One is about what we're talking about, the line on private property. But I thought there was also a concern of like the town as a whole. How many new housing units can we have? How many hookups could we add before it's a problem? Does the town have any like data to that effect?
We'd have to look at the sewer plant and the upgrades to it, and basically because you have a low flow in the winter and a very high flow in the summer because of all the leaky pipes, what allows groundwater to come into the sewer system. Obviously, the town is in the process of doing some work on the sewer mains and on the water mains, but how far that gets us and how far it goes, will all be fixed is a good question. So our concern obviously is overloading the current lagoon system with too much more sewage. So I mean the water system, it can probably handle whatever. You're moving on your service matter on your property that's your problem. If it's leaking, you need to fix it. That's the ordinance that you need to fix your leaks. If you need to find them. But there's probably not very many water lines in town, the properties that can't handle a generalist, but it's not that extreme an extra usage in general. So, and that's something we'd have to look at with the conditional permit is just how many extra people you could have. I mean,
Yeah.
which again is part of that permitting process, is the town will agree to understand the burden that would be taken on by putting a more semi-permanent hook to that area, and yes, it can handle it, but you would be responsible for that part, which I think is completely understandable, and I don't think that's asking too much at all of the homeowners or the town to be able to meet together in the middle of that. It's simply putting that in the code so that it is there for residents and things. As far as with Jamie's, I love the conversation so far that I've heard about the compostable toilet and the back and forth on that. Can you explain a little bit about what your feelings and what your purpose for using that compostable toilet on your property would be?
Well, and even more so than that, I was looking and thinking about the temporary occupancy permits, the current setup, that it might be for 3 months, it might be for 6 months, just for whatever. With that, there's a requirement that be hooked up to the sewer. So to me, this is like, we're talking about trailers or RVs, like mobile things that are in place temporarily by design because of the permit. So couldn't we relieve some of the pressure on the system by not making a requirement that those, if they have black water tanks and you can take the RV somewhere else to dump it, granted it's not close and convenient, the nearest is like Moab or everywhere else, but it's the shit somebody else's problem then, and it's not ours to deal with.
which we would not like a bunch of RVs going down to our living system. We don't have an RV dump spot down there, and because that adds a high strength shock to a system. Lagoon systems just don't like high strength shocks. No system does. I think Telluride might even have banned people dumping up there with their RVs and whatnot. But yes, if it's self-contained or a composting toilet would be fall under the same criteria as a self-contained, as long as it's taken care of after it's composted, then yeah, that can be written into the permit.
Yeah.
And we just did that the other day with the temporary use permit because they were gonna have a self-contained RV and they had no intention of hooking up the sewer with it. It made it easier to approve their temporary use because they said, well, we're not gonna dump the sewage into the sewer line, so.
And yeah, so just like changing the code a little bit to have that reflected that that's an option for people instead of finding out when they come in here. And another need of RVs and tiny homes and these kinds of things that I hear people say in conversations with neighbors, they would say, oh yeah, it would be so fun to have like a little trailer in town that's like for friends and family or whatever, kind of our situation, we're showering in the house, we're doing laundry in the house, but maybe we have a composting toilet to like deal with whatever. And so again, just having it in the code to say that, hey, stuff like this is acceptable as long as you have ways to deal with it. And in that situation, I'm not sure. I think I, more than you guys, I'm leaning a little more on the lack of regulation as we go through these things, to have the first inclination to be like the freedom of property owners to do things right, and then instead of having everyone have to come in and ask for permits and variances and all this stuff, it's like when you screw up, right, when you're dumping sewage or you're doing other inappropriate things, then we come after you and shut you down. But generally, homeowners should be able to do what they want with their property, and there shouldn't be these restrictions on it.
Right.
You know, and there's standards, on the public sector's telling you how many people get to use the sewer the sewer line that you have. And it's Jamie, and she can have a family of 10 living in. So it would be the same thing as having a couple people living out in the yard. Personally, I don't want anybody living in my yard, but I'm here to support everybody else's rights. I don't think it's right to limit Jamie, who's a single